All right, guys, so we're going to take some notes on Chapter 10. Chapter 10 focuses on agriculture and how we get our food and how some of that food has been modified, genetically modified, and the impacts that what that might be having on our food supplies. So chapter 10 starts off with the example of transgenic maize in Mexico. And we want to write down some notes about this. First off, we need to all be on the same page that maize, M-A-I-Z-E, is the same thing as corn. Okay, it's just the native word for corn. And what we're talking about is transgenic maize. And what that word transgenic means is having DNA from multiple species. So this is corn that's been genetically modified. So sometimes these things are called GM or genetically modified foods. And the issue that's occurring in Mexico is that many of the native species of corn, because there are hundreds and hundreds of different types of corn species, are potentially being contaminated by some of this genetically modified corn from places like the United States. And this might be an issue because we might lose some of the biodiversity of the corn crop. We might, if we get down to only one type of corn crop, end up having some loss of product, losing the ability to grow that species, losing the ability to grow the corn. And also it's an issue of heritage. I mean, if you have been harvesting this corn for hundreds and hundreds of years in your family, you don't want to find out that it's been contaminated and now it's a different species of plant. So make sure you write down an example of this ethical controversy, because remember, these come up a lot in our essay questions. So the reason we're talking about agriculture, coming right off of a chapter where we just discussed in chapter 9, a little bit of the history of agriculture, is because we want to focus here more on the issues, the current issues in the planet. The current issue is that we have to feed more and more people all the time. We have to make more food all the time. And we want to do so sustainably to have as little impact as possible on our planet. For every 3 people we feed today, we're going to have to feed 4 people in a very short time, in about the year 2050, because of population growth. And this is probably something we can do because we are constantly making more food all the time. Let's jot down a list of some of the reasons why we are able to make more food. We're able to make more food now because we are simply just putting more fossil fuels into the system. We're using more fossil fuels for agriculture. We're able to make more food because we have more irrigation systems. So we're able to use more of the planet's water for agriculture. We're able to make more food because we're able to make more fertilizers. We have the technology to increase the rates of pulling nitrogen and potassium and phosphorus and some of those compounds that we need from the environment and put them into agriculture. So more fossil fuels for agriculture, more irrigation for agriculture, more fertilizer. A fourth reason why we're able to make more food now is because we're able to cultivate more land. We talked about in chapter 9, we're able to cultivate very arid regions, very desert-like regions that we were never able to cultivate before. And a final reason why we're able to make more food now than ever before is because with our technology, we have been able to develop more productive crops. So on 1 acre of land, just like you saw in King Corn, we can grow more corn than we ever could before. So we certainly have the ability and the technology to make more food, but as we do so, we need to think about doing it sustainably. We know that the demand on food is increasing, but there are still people on the planet that don't have enough to eat. Not having enough food is called undernutrition. Okay, so very simple definition. Undernutrition is simply not having enough food to eat. And about 1 billion people on the planet, of our roughly 7 billion people, don't have enough food to eat. This is mostly a problem, what you want to write down, it's mostly a problem in the developing world. But there are still people in the United States that don't have enough food to eat. In fact, the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, has a policy they're working right now towards what they call food security. The idea that there would be a sustainable and secure amount of food for all people in the country. So our government does work towards preventing undernutrition in our country. A bigger issue that we have in the United States, instead of having undernutrition, what we typically have, and other developed countries have this problem as well, is overnutrition. Because if you think about our food sources, the cheapest food sources that we have are generally very high in calorie and very unhealthy. If you want to have a healthy, balanced dinner with a protein and vegetables and a whole grain, that's going to be more expensive than to just go to the store and buy a 99-cent Big Gulp that's full of sugar and calories and, a burrito that you heat up in the microwave. It's not necessarily going to be nutrient rich, but it is often calorie rich. So in the United States, a lot of times people have overnutrition problems where they have the obesity issues. They're not getting healthy food, but they are getting enough food to survive. And one more term that kind of goes in here is the idea of malnutrition. There are definitely areas of the world where food's available, but it's not quality food. It's not the right kinds of food. And when this happens, when you have malnutrition where you're not getting the right kinds of food, it can be just as deadly as undernutrition. Two common global examples of this are kwashiorkor and marasmus. The picture on the screen is an example of what someone with kwashiorkor looks like. Kwashiorkor happens, you want to make a note, when you have enough starch in your diet, you are getting food, but you're not getting enough protein, or maybe you're not getting any protein at all. So you lose your hair, your muscles lose their mass, you get a bloated or distended abdomen, just not a healthy state, definitely can lead to death. And marasmus is a situation where you're not only getting not enough protein, but you're not getting enough calories overall. Marasmus, if you want to write down a little note for yourself, is often just called the wasting disease. It's a disease of death, but because you're not only getting no protein, but you're also not getting enough calories. Okay. Is this problem getting better? Yes, it's definitely getting better. We have the ability to make more and more food, but it is still a global issue. So when did this ability for us to make lots of food really start occurring? It really occurred late in the 20th century in what we called the Green Revolution. And I've mentioned the Green Revolution several times in class. Remember, the Green Revolution is not like green buildings and green practices. It has nothing to do with being with recycling or being sustainable. The Green Revolution is what was termed this period when we started growing more plants in more regions and making arid regions more cultivated. So it started in the late 20th century with a man named Norman Borlaug right here. And he is given credit for saving more lives than anyone in human history. What he did, so you can write down in your notes, is he started his work in Mexico with a very hardy strain of wheat, and he was able to help save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lives in Mexico by simply providing a food source for people that would have otherwise been have undernutrition or malnutrition problems. Okay, and so all these methods, all these things we've listed on the last slide, using more fossil fuels, more irrigation, all these practices, led to, on average, 5 times more yield in our crops than before the Green Revolution. So we are definitely able to increase our output and increase the amount of food that we create on a given area of land. Now, this definitely has caused some problems. It's also caused some successes. Some of the problems listed here, we're obviously now putting more fertilizers into the environment, more pesticides into the environment, more waters being used for irrigation. We're putting 80 times more energy into creating our food than we did about 100 years ago. This energy, maybe we need this energy for other sources. Maybe we need the water and the irrigation for other sources. So this can be problematic. The Green Revolution also has essentially taken almost all agriculture on the planet and turned it into an industrialized agriculture. There's not very many small family farms anymore. This has prompted what's called a monoculture. You know, most farms only grow one crop. That's called a monoculture, where you have one farm for one crop. You're a farmer in Iowa, the only thing you grow on your farm is corn. You're a farmer in Indonesia, the only thing you grow on your farm is rice, nothing else. And this creates genetic similarity, it decreases biodiversity. And we'll talk about in chapter 11 some more reasons why that's a problem, why we don't want to decrease our biodiversity. But overall, 90% of the food you eat comes from 15 crops and 8 types of livestock. This is a little shocking when you know that there are thousands and thousands of different plants and animals on the planet that could be food sources, but we are definitely narrowing down where we get our food from. And this does put us at risk. What if one of those 15 crops dies off or is under strain from a drought? This is going to throw off our economies, our food markets. You're going to see this happening a little bit this year because of our drought this summer and the lower amounts of corn that were produced. Overall, we also see a decrease in yield, a slight decrease or a decline in the amount of product that's being made in the last few years, and an increase in population. So obviously those last 2 points, when you put those together, it creates an issue. There have definitely been some successes with the Green Revolution. One that's not even listed there is just simply it's allowed people to survive. It's given people a source of food. It has also prevented some deforestation, because if I can grow more crop on one little area of land, I don't have to go and cut down trees to continue increasing the amount of surface area on the planet that I'm using for farming. So that's a benefit. And it's just increased food production in the world. We don't have to worry too much about shipping food from country to country. We don't have to worry about one area of the world not having enough food. Most areas are able to produce the food that they need. So when you look at this and you study for your test, make sure you examine the positives and the negatives of this Green Revolution. So what I'd like you to do right now is to copy and paste this URL into your web browser, and I want you to watch this video. It's a 9-minute and 35-second video about how farming practices have changed and how we are making enough food for people moving into the future. On the next slide, there's some blank area where you can just take notes after you watch, or however it works best for you. But make sure you write down some notes as you watch this video. When you're done, you can come back to the PowerPoint and continue. Remember, on your iPad, you definitely can be using that double tap option. If you double tap the home button on your screen, that will bring up that bar at the bottom, and it'll help you flip back and forth between your YouTube video, your notes, your reader, whatever you're using to take notes right now. So use that double tap option so you're not constantly going in and out of the PowerPoint, not constantly reopening and closing the programs. Okay, when you're done, come back to this point in the PowerPoint and we'll just keep on continuing with the notes. One more issue that gets brought up in chapter 10 is the idea of biofuels, and this is just going to be a quick little explanation of what biofuels are, because we're really going to come back to this in a later chapter when we're talking about energy. But because we're talking about plants now and the strain on producing enough food for the world, I do want to mention biofuels. So biofuels are fuels, energy sources that come from organic matter. And that organic matter is predominantly corn in the United States. It's not corn in every country.